The Carrigans were an ordinary family blessed with extraordinary gifts. Sophisticated palates.
What do you call these things again?
Rissoles. Chicken sponge cake.
An innate sense of taste and style.
This is going straight to the pool room.
Finally, the most cherished gift of all, their house.
Dad called it his castle.
Like for the Carrigans in the Aussie cult film, our home is our castle, no matter what's in our backyard.
Not a sound. And this is my backyard.
Is that the runway there?
Well, I reckon we're the luckiest family in the world.
And for most of us, that pride goes beyond the front yard to the berms, the drains, the street, the neighbourhood. So when things aren't quite right, who do you call?
My wife and I got rung up in the middle of the night. It was about 2 o'clock one morning, and they were absolutely going off at me like a Gatling gun, calling me all the words under the sun. What the hell's wrong? They're ripping up the road right in front of my house at 2 o'clock in the morning, and you useless prick, you told them to do it.
I'm Sharon Brett-Kelly. Today on The Detail, the biggest bugbears in suburbia and why they make us so angry. Let's start with the big one. Here's Horowhenua District councillor Sam Jennings.
I'd have to say at the top of the list is berms. Berms, lots about berms, and Horowhenua made some decisions last year about reducing its level of service around cutting berms. And so that's generated quite a bit of interest and activity and some angst over the last 12 months. And I had the sort of bit of post-traumatic stress this morning when I saw another Facebook post, some people raising the topic of berm mowing again.
What do people say?
Well, it's one of these issues that it is so bizarrely polarising, where some people say it's your bit of land, take some pride and look after it as the resident in closest proximity to it. And then others are like, no, I pay my rates, absolutely something that council must do. It's their land. If they don't want to do it, I'm going to round up it, put Roundup on it or plant a veggie garden or whatever. And so it's actually fascinating. And I've learnt lots about not only how the council works and how council responds to these things, but also human nature.
Why is it that people do get so worked up about that strip of grass?
Well, councils as a beast. Some people love to hate councils, and that sort of drives this feeling that council should be doing more and should be doing things right and taking care of all these little details within the community. And then I think others take the view, that it's a matter of me wanting to make the place in which I live nice and keep it maintained. It really brings out the worst in some people, online in particular.
What's the most extreme case?
Obviously, there's always exceptions to the rule, and we have had some cases where there are people with, very small properties, but the berm outside their house, large area, maybe 1,000 square metres.
John Murphy reckons he has the biggest berm in town and says he will let it grow in protest. He's with us now. How big is your berm, John?
It's certainly got to be bigger than my own yard space, and I have to guesstimate that. I remember when I once got it quoted about 3 or 4 years ago, that space was going to cost $50 compared to $30 to my own laws.
Council ended up with a solution where some of our main roads into our towns and settlements, where those are now maintained and mowed by council. But obviously that still doesn't keep everyone happy, and it doesn't deal with all of those cases where there are large berms that people are now being asked to maintain them.
Stand by for part 2 of Bermageddon.
Mayor Max Brough in New Plymouth has got a berm story that's hard to beat, but he's a little bit in denial about it.
Sure, we're the perfect council. I don't have any problems in my district.
Really? What about the woman who was fined after a dispute over who's responsible for maintaining the pohutukawa and grass on her berm outside her home? Now, is that not a problem?
I would have to declare conflict of interest in that, right?
Why?
It's my daughter.
Was it?
Alana Brough has planted a fruit and vegetable garden in the berm in defiance of council bylaws.
That makes a better story, right?
It kind of does. Oh, yes, and I'm just seeing here, daughter of New Plymouth councillor, well, now daughter of New Plymouth mayor. But
I mean, how silly is that, eh? What have I got myself into?
what was that about, though, Max?
I guess it was about a young lady who got a bit stubborn and didn't like how policies were working and applied. And she had a large berm that she had a bit of a gripe about having to mow, and it filled up her bin every week. And she wanted to do an alternative. And then it turned into quite a long-winded exercise of people exerting authority and people testing the boundaries of what that authority was. And by coincidence, her father was a councillor at the time. And read into that what you may. And then letters started to get exchanged.
Within 6 working days, I received a letter from council saying to remove the trees and to reinstate it back to grass. Or else I'll get a $1,000 penalty fee and $50 every day thereafter until they're removed.
Alana Brough says if the council insists the berm is her responsibility, including the giant Pahuta kawa, she should be able to get some use out of it.
I guess when you look at the wider picture of that, it's all very good if someone plants that out, but what's it going to look like in 2, 5, 10 years' time, and who's going to pay for it if it needs to be put back, if it's got out of control or doesn't get looked after? But there's a part of me that says, if people want to do that, why should we not let them do it within reason, and put out a process that people can make a choice for what suits their life and their frontage and how they want their place to look. We expect them to mow grass. Why do we just expect them to mow grass? If we expect them to look after the grass, why don't we give them the grace of saying, well, if you want to have that privilege, we'll give you that privilege, and we'll give you some framework that you have to manage that privilege other than just grass. Yeah.
But she was fined $1,000.
No, they said if you don't reinstate by a certain date, we will fine you, and then we'll charge you every day after that. But common sense comes through in the end. It sort of got relented when it hit the media cycle. That's the power of the media, right?
Let's run through some other things that get on people's goat.
Ow, stupid trash, rotten, stinky, hate world, revenge soon, take out on everyone. Garbage water! Oh! Hey, wait! Stop! I have garbage!
Or, in our language, rubbish.
Woohoo! Look at that pavement day!
And those potholes are becoming a real nuisance.
Also a nuisance, water meters, parties, driving on the beach, broken footpaths, Pahuta kawa trees, the wrong road seal.
People will DM me on Facebook or Instagram or tag me on Twitter or email me or phone me or text me.
That's Auckland councillor Richard Hills on the North Shore, or Kaipatiki. He's so dedicated to fixing people's problems, he takes the job on holiday.
Depending on what the issue is, like if it's raining hard, it could be 20 or 30. People might tag me in a bunch of different things a day. But yeah, I'd say sort of averaging 10 or 20 a day, most days, I guess. And I think it also just reduces people's anxiety. The last 5 or 6 years with COVID and storms and everything else, I think people just want to be reassured and like nothing's, gonna change dramatically for them, and then they can go about their day again.
When it's raining hard, what do people want you to do?
People want to point out blocked drains or ask if the drains have been unblocked or ask what to do if the rain continues, ask what the warnings are. If I've got ahead of it, I could put up a bit of a post on my own page saying, here's the Met Service warnings, here's what's happened. Healthy Waters have unblocked all the main problem spots. They won't have a chance to unblock all 98,000 catch pits because that is sort of like a several months job. But, the problem spots, the places where we know it floods, they've done that. And then people go along on their day feeling comfortable again.
I'm just looking at the list of things that you've been tagged into of late, and bearing in mind that you're an Auckland councillor on the North Shore. So I'll run through them. The T3 Oniwa Lane.
So it's actually the longest running transit lane ever, like well over 30 years old. But we get a lot of complaints, obviously, of the people in the general lane being stuck in traffic. And this is the long road that leads to the motorway. But actually, what I try and get across to people is, yes, there's a lot of congestion in that general lane, but it is one of the most, if not the most, efficient road in Auckland.
Roaming dogs, what can you do about them, Richard?
Well, roaming dogs is one of the ones, like, I welcome people's tags, but roaming dogs is a bit of a one that I get a bit grumpy about, just because a bunch of people might tag me in, this dog's unsafe, or this dog's running in traffic, or this dog scared the kids on the way to school. But I would prefer they rang the animal management number straight away, and that's the quickest that we can get that dog help or prevent, the dog maybe hurting someone else. But unfortunately, I might not see that tag for 4 or 5 hours, or other elected members will get tagged in too. And I think people think we're going to capture the dog and put it down straight away, so they're a bit hesitant. But actually phoning it in will get the priority that's needed for that suburb if there's a problem emerging. But just tagging me on Facebook, unfortunately, doesn't pick up the stats.
Right. So what you're saying is this is one issue where people need to pick up the phone.
Yeah, and ring animal management. And it's, pretty easy to find, but I will put under the comment like, hey, thanks for the tag. I can't do anything myself. Please ring the number. Please describe where you saw this dog. And the animal management team are surprisingly quick. They actually know there's a problem, but they definitely won't be looking at community groups.
No. So parking in narrow streets and demands for yellow lines.
Yes. And this is always one that AT will come back and investigate. And often, if I log it for people or I convince them to log it on the AT website themselves, often AT will come back and go, yeah, you're right. On that one corner, we'll add some yellow lines. So that's a common one on mornings, or if there's been congestion in other parts of the network, people start taking rat runs and then realise, it's actually much harder to get through this more local street.
And the dreaded yellow-legged hornet and the hunt for it.
A conservationist is urging Aucklanders to set homemade traps for the invasive yellow-legged hornet. The species of hornet preys on honeybees, with fears that could affect the agricultural sector.
Can you do anything about that?
Strangely enough, it's an MPI-led issue, but lots of people have been contacting me because people are so passionate about the environment, I think across Auckland, but in Kaipatiki especially, we've got Pest Free Kaipatiki, we've got the Kaipatiki Project, then you've got Restoring Takarong Hauraki and Pupuki Birdsong, these great volunteer groups in our area, and they're just desperate to help, and they just see, oh my gosh, this introduced pest is going to wreak havoc on biodiversity, and sometimes government agencies want to hold it all to themselves and say, no, we're leading it. And at the early stages, they didn't even want council help, so a couple of us did push for them to at least allow council and community groups help spread the word or help make some traps. So although it's not council-led, council are assisting with field officers and also allowing the kind of relationship with the volunteer groups to kind of take part. Because I think people just sort of create their own vigilante actions because they want to help if we don't empower people. So,
and Richard, is that a problem, the vigilanteism?
Sometimes. Look, we saw it during COVID on both sides, right? People getting angry at people wearing masks, or people getting angry at people for, not staying 1 meter apart. I think 99% of people are just wanting to help and just wanting to do the right thing. There are some people on all sides of an issue that do make the stories, make the news by doing something over the top. But I think most people genuinely want to help. It's just trying to empower people in the moment about how they can do that in a coordinated way, so that it doesn't undo some good work on the other end.
You get nice people that are really in a corner, and that's the beauty of the job. And then you just get other ones that are so hyper-focused. They've probably rung you 10 times before about 10 different things, but it's nothing to do with council, but you're going to get an earful because you're the one.
Former Clutha Mayor and councillor Bryan Cadogan has 27 years of stories up his sleeve, but the phone call at 2 a.m. takes the cake. It was a furious resident who demanded he stop the roadworks outside his house.
Well, I told them to what? What tell them to do? Where do you live? And they lived on the main road, State Highway 1, Transit. It wasn't even our road. When you tell them, it's not like, oh, gee, I'm sorry. It's just, well, you're still a useless prick. Yeah. so you get used to getting your pedigree read, and that, I suppose In the old days, when I first came in, there was an element of respect there. But in the last few years, the filters have gone down. And you wear it both barrels, whether you're in the right, wrong, or sideways, nothing, didn't have a clue what they were on about it, you still get it. So it's just a way of the world, unfortunately.
Yeah, and why do you think that is?
COVID certainly changed society. It dropped a few of the filters off, but I think now... So don't get me wrong, most of the people had genuine complaints and you could genuinely help. But there were some frequent flyers that just flew in low and hit hard, and you didn't, like it would be the most minute thing, and they expected you to know about, the bullcock at the end of the filter down the end of my street, and I don't even know where you live, mate. And you're meant to know everything, and then they have a go at you. And could it be that they watch TV and they're that frustrated with Trump and
right,
I don't know, everything that's going on, but you're the nearest thing to a human being that they can give an earful to. What
are the things that really get up people's noses? Is it rubbish collections?
No, rubbish collections. We've got wheelie bins, and they're pretty well liked. It's things like blocked culverts, my road closure, minute things that actually have really wound them up, and it's probably a series of events that cumulatively have got to them, but you don't know anything about it, and all of a sudden you get in a barrage, and I haven't got a clue what you're on about, and you try and hold in there, but sometimes you lose your will to live.
Horowhenua's Sam Jennings says the overhaul of local government and rates capping are going to put even more squeeze on the council dollar and are likely to upset a few more people.
It does mean that councils ultimately will do less and will need to be far more efficient and optimise the ratepayer money they have.
What kind of things are you thinking, Sam?
Yeah, so probably the biggest pressure is seeing where the government's going in terms of their definitions of what core business is. Probably the areas of pressure are things like destination management, so tourism, playing a role in tourism, economic development, also things in that community space. So probably like contestable community grants, maybe sort of arts and culture, some of that kind of funding in our libraries programming in particular, sort of our community centres where, of course, the libraries and community centres will be core business, but what they actually spend their money on and what they do and what they deliver is probably where there'll be pressure. And our council, for example, funds things like lifeguards at our beaches over summer. We have Māori wardens, that kind of thing. And so all of that will either need to fit into one of those core business boxes or we'll have to make a decision, look, there's just no funding to be able to deliver that.
Okay, so getting back to the list of things that people get so worked up about, are any of those things on that list high up? I mean, I'm thinking things like the library and what goes on there, or arts and culture funding.
Yeah, no, I guess the things that get people really heated up are things like dogs, trees, lifting up footpaths and that kind of things. I've had emails and texts about placement of people's rubbish bins, trees growing over neighbours' fences, that kind of thing. I think that there will be some pressure on council to look at how it responds to citizen complaints, like particularly noise. For example, most councils around New Zealand would probably currently maintain a 24/7 ability to respond to noise complaints or other complaints of that nature, even animal control complaints. And so I think most councils in a rates capping environment are going to have to really think about how it delivers its service. And so it could be that there might not be an immediate overnight response. Some councils might have to choose to pull back on how it delivers those services and whether it provides a 24/7 service.
Okay, there were two things that came out of what you've said there. Noise is such a tricky thing, isn't it?
The spooky sound has been keeping residents of this Auckland street up at night, but the source remains a mystery.
It's certainly a problem area because For the person who's complaining about the noise, they want immediate action. It is obviously bothering them. It's something that they're asking for help with. But essentially providing the cost of that service could become really prohibitive if we're having to have someone on standby to respond to a complaint at 3 a.m. There seems to be more appetite these days for people to just want to be able to ring someone, make a complaint, and have someone else respond and deal with it. And I don't know whether that's because people don't want to have the confrontation or they feel uncomfortable. I feel like there's been an increase in that reliance on third party to resolve these small neighbourhood disputes or issues.
Is that where the complaint about placement of rubbish bins, is that one neighbour complaining about their other neighbour and where they put their rubbish bin?
Exactly, yeah. So they'll say it's too close to my driveway and so it's blocking my view. And so rather than walking over to the neighbour and saying, hey, this is really bothering me, can we find a solution? It's generating a complaint to council. And so in this current environment, that obviously has a cost, both a financial cost because we have to employ someone to answer the phone. They then put it in an email, send it to the right person. There's also an opportunity cost because we've got people that are responding to things or dealing with things that could be doing other things. Look, it's a really challenging environment. For that person who's making the complaint or phoning in that issue, it's really important. But in the big picture of council business, it's really minor. And obviously from a council perspective, the more that can be resolved neighbour to neighbour, the better.
Over in New Plymouth, Mayor Max says people just want to be heard and they've got a solution.
We're setting up what's called a public engagement committee, and that committee is designed expressly so people could bring their little issues forward or big issues, whatever they are, come forward. A group of councillors on that committee will listen to them and decide the merits of the problem and how far it gets escalated or not. And that's a committee that hasn't existed here before.
Isn't that great? That's kind of power to the people.
Hopefully. It's actually not hard to do. That's what people want, right? That's why they elect us locally, is to listen to their problems and help work through them.
That's it for today. The Detail is a newsroom production supported by RNZ and New Zealand On Air. This podcast was produced by Gwen McClure and engineered by William Saunders. Thanks to Max Brough, Sam Jennings, Bryan Cadogan and Richard Hills. I'm Sharon Brett Kelly. Ka kite.